Good morning and welcome to today's episode of Live Without Limits, Reach Personal Success on a Daily Basis. And today's show is titled Empathy Deficit, Understanding the Impact of Relationships in Society. So in this session, we're delving into the topic that is both intriguing and vital to the fabric of our relationships and society, the empathy deficit. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, is a cornerstone of human connection. Yet, in our fast paced digital world, there's a growing concern that this critical emotional skill is in decline. We'll explore what it means to have an empathy deficit and how it manifests in our interactions and why nurturing empathy is more important now than ever. So join me as we impact the nuances of this phenomenon and consider it a profound implication on our lives and communities. So, empathy is the capacity to recognize, understand, and share the thoughts and feelings of another person. It involves putting oneself in another's shoes and experiencing their emotions as if they were your own. Empathy is a fundamental element of human connection, fostering compassion and understanding it in interpersonal relationships. An empathy deficit, on the other hand, occurs when individuals struggle to engage in this emotional exchange. It is characterized by a lack of sensitivity to the emotions of others, difficulty in recognizing nonverbal cues, and an inability to offer appropriate and emotional support. This deficit can lead to misunderstandings, strained relationships, and a sense of isolation for both the person that is lacking in empathy and those around you. Now, here's the thing. Let me give you a good example of someone who lacks empathy. For years as a child, I was being physically abused by my father and emotionally, verbally, and mentally abused by my mother. And when I went to school, because I had a disability and I was different, I was being bullied in the school. And I would come home, and at times I would go in my bedroom and I would cry. And my mother would come to me and say, "Why are you crying? You have no reason to cry." And you know what? I did have a reason to cry. I was hurting. What I needed from her was a hug and being told that I was loved and the feeling and knowledge that they truly did love me. Because I grew up in a home that was so cold that if I didn't have the wherewithal and the my personality wasn't what it was, very easily I could have ended up descending into being a very violent person. And the sad part is I'm totally the opposite. And yet my mother once tried to accuse me of being violent. And the fact of the matter was, it was my younger sister who was violent and always physically abusive to me, and my older sister. And yet she got away with it because she was the golden child who couldn't do anything wrong. And when my mother couldn't pin that on me because even though she went to the courts and tried to file papers, because they never served the papers on me and she came back, then she turned around and decided she was going to show me that she can control me by disinheriting me and taking away from me my financial stability, by uh, making my younger sister the executor over the estate, and making sure that if I tried to sue the estate for my share, that I would be left nothing. And my younger sister physically abuses her older sister and is mentally, verbally, and emotionally abusive to me. And she thinks she has the right to do it and shouldn't be held accountable. These are two people who lack empathy to begin with. The reasons behind an empathy deficit can be complex, ranging from neurological factors to environmental influences such as upbringing, which I just told you the story about, cultural norms, and the impact of technology on human interaction in a society where empathy is deficit. We may witness increased conflict, reduced cooperation, and a weakening of the social fabric that binds communities together. Understanding that empathy and its absence is crucial for addressing these challenges and fostering a more compassionate and connected world. The psychological and social factors contributing to a lack of empathy are multifaceted and can be vary greatly from one individual to another. Psychologically, certain personality disorders, such as narcissistic and antisocial personality disorder, can impair a person's ability to empathize with others. And that's exactly what my mother was and what my younger sister were, is because the two of them are like two peas in a pod and don't think they should ever be held accountable for anything. Additionally, trauma and chronic stress can affect emotional regulation and the capacity for empathy. From a social perspective, upbringing plays a significant role. Children who grow up in an environment where empathy is not modeled or valued may struggle to develop this skill. Cultural norms that empathize individualism over collectivism can also contribute to an empathy deficit, as can competitive environments where personal gain is prioritized over mutual support. Now, let me give you a good example of that. My younger sister went into teaching because, well, at that time, women didn't have a whole lot of options, but at the same time, she became a special ed teacher. Couldn't deal with having two sisters with a disability, but she became a special ed teacher. Well, here's the truth of the fact. She did teach for 30 years, but she had to take 3 years off. But after 19 years, and during the first 19 years, she never stayed in the same school more than 1 year and never got along with any of her principals or the other teachers. And then after the 3 year layoff, she went back to teaching. Same thing happened, only the last year she taught, she had to change school systems. So there is it where it shows you someone who is doing in a profession who lacks empathy. Understanding this factor is crucial in addressing the empathy deficit and fostering a more compassionate and connected society. The role of empathy in relationships. Empathy is a key ingredient in the development and maintenance of healthy relationships. It allows individuals to connect on a deeper emotional level, fostering trust and a sense of safety between partners, friends, family members, and even colleagues. When people feel understood and valued, they are more likely to open up and share their true selves. which can lead to stronger, more authentic connections. Empathy also plays a crucial role in conflict resolution by understanding and acknowledging another person's perspective. Individuals can address issues with compassion and find solutions that consider everyone's needs and feelings. This approach not only resolves conflicts more effectively, but also strengthens the bond between those involved by demonstrating care and respect for each other's experiences. Moreover, empathy encourages altruistic behavior and cooperation. When we can empathize with others, we are more inclined to help and support them, which can create a positive feedback loop of kindness and generosity within relationships. This mutual support is the foundation of a thriving community when members feel valued and supported. Empathy is essential to building and sustaining healthy relationships. It enables deeper connections, effective conflict resolution, and a supportive community, all of which contribute to the overall well being of individuals and society as a whole. The consequences of an empathy deficit in personal and professional relationships can be quite profound. In personal relationships, a lack of empathy can lead to misunderstandings, conflict, and emotional distance. Without the ability to understand and share in another's feelings, individuals may struggle to form deep, meaningful connections. This can result in a sense of isolation and loneliness for both parties and may ultimately lead to the deterioration of the relationship. In professional settings, empathy deficit can hinder teamwork, collaboration, and overall workplace morale. Leaders who lack empathy may struggle to motivate and engage their employees, potentially leading to a toxic work environment. Without empathy, managers may fail to recognize or address the needs and concerns of their staff, which can result in decreased job satisfaction, higher turnover rates, and reduced productivity. Empathy deficit can impact customer relationships. Businesses that fail to understand and respond to their customers' needs and emotions may struggle to build loyalty and trust. This can lead to a poor reputation, loss of clients, and ultimately a decline in business success. Overall, empathy is a critical component for building and maintaining strong, healthy relationships, both personally and professionally. The absence of empathy can create barriers to communication, collaboration, and connection, which are essential for thriving relationships and successful business outcomes. Empathy deficit in society. The broader societal impacts of an empathy deficit, significant and far reaching. When empathy is lacking on a societal level, it can exacerbate social divisions, increase intolerance, and contribute to a culture of dehumanization. Without empathy, societal issues such as poverty, discrimination, and injustice may not receive the attention and understanding necessary to drive change as individuals may be less inclined to advocate for those who are different from themselves. And until the laws changed, until society recognized its disability community, many were dehumanized, especially if your disability was very obvious when they looked at you. And yes, mine is because it's cerebral palsy. I don't walk without a limp, and I have to wear a brace in order to walk better. And my hand contracts because the tendons are very tight. And as a young child, I also had 3/4 of my vision in one eye blocked, which is still there. So it's a very obvious disability because cerebral palsy uh, it affects the brain, and it affects those parts of the brain that control certain muscles, and therefore the movement can be very ataxic, and it creates its own problems. An empathy deficit can also affect public discourse, leading to polarized and hostile interactions. A political and social debates, a lack of empathy can prevent constructive dialogue and hinder the development of comprehensive solutions to complex problems. This can result in policies that fail to consider the well being of all members of society, particularly marginalized groups. Prior to the 1960s, people that were born with disabilities were just hospitalized and forgotten about. And until the laws began to change, they were looked at as a group of people that didn't exist. Therefore, when people encountered me, because I was different and because there were no guarantees for people with disabilities to get an education, I was the only one in the classroom and in the school with a disability. So that made me an easy mark to be bullied and laughed at simply because I am different. But there's still a 20% of society who have disabilities. And remember something, prior to the Americans with Disabilities Act, what happened? People with disabilities are referred as handicapped, and many were not because they looked at the opportunity to get an education, to get ahead. And the term handicap actually comes out of the early part of the 20th century when people stood at street corners with their cap in hand asking for money. And people with disabilities work today. They don't ask for handouts. Moreover, empathy deficit can influence the development of children and adolescents, shaping the next generation's attitudes and behaviors. This is what was going on because there was such a lack of empathy because no one saw people with disabilities around. If young people are not taught to value and practice empathy, they may grow up with diminished capacity for compassion and cooperation, which can perpetuate cycles of conflict and misunderstanding. An empathy deficit can determine that societal fabric impending progress towards a more inclusive, understanding, and collaborative society. It is essential for people with disabilities and institutions to recognize the importance of empathy and take steps to cultivate within communities to promote social harmony and collective well being. Examining case studies or current events can provide a clearer picture of the effects of a lack of empathy on community and culture. For instance, we can look at the rise of cyberbullying in the digital age, the anonymity and distance provided by the internet can lead to detachment from the consequences of one's actions, resulting in a lack of empathy towards targets and online harassment. This has led to tragic outcomes, including mental health crises and even suicides, highlighting the severe impact of empathy deficits on individuals and communities. Another case study that can involve the response to natural disasters or humanitarian crisis when communities or nations show a lack of empathy towards those affected. The response can be slow, inadequate, or even non existent. This can exacerbate the suffering of victims and delay recovery efforts. Conversely, when there is a strong empathetic response, resources and support can be mobilized quickly, demonstrating the positive power of empathy in actions. In terms of the cultural impact, we can consider the treatment of refugees and immigrants. A lack of empathy towards those groups can lead to hostile immigration policies, xenophobias, and social exclusion. This not only affects the individuals who are directly involved, but also contributes to a culture of fear and division within the host society. These examples underscore the importance of fostering empathy to build supportive, inclusive, and resilient communities. They also show how an empathy deficit can lead to negative outcomes that ripple through society, affecting social cohesion and the collective well being. Now, here's something we're going to talk about that is very important: overcoming empathy deficit. Developing and strengthening empathy skills is a crucial aspect to personal growth and can lead to more harmonious relationships and a more compassionate society. Here are some insights on how individuals can cultivate empathy. Active listening. Practice active listening by giving your full attention to the speaker, acknowledging their feelings, and responding appropriately. This helps to understand their perspective and emotions better. Perspective taking. Try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Imagine their life experiences, challenges, and emotions to gain a deeper understanding of their situation. Emotional awareness. Work on recognizing and understanding your emotions. This self awareness can help you relate to others' emotions more effectively. Nonverbal communication. Pay attention to body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, both in yourself and others. These nonverbal cues can provide insight into the unspoken feelings and attitudes. Practice empathy in everyday life. Look for opportunities to express empathy in daily interactions. Small acts of kindness and understanding can go a long way. Educate yourself. Learn about different cultures, lifestyles, and experiences. This can broaden your perspective and reduce biases that may hinder empathy. Seek feedback. Ask for feedback from friends, family, or colleagues about how you handle empathetic situations. Constructive criticism can help you improve your empathetic responses. Mindfulness and reflection. Engage in mindfulness and practices and reflect on your interactions with others. Consider how you can have even more empathetic and what you can do differently in the future. Now, here's something to even think about. Read literature and watch films. Engage with stories and characters that offer diverse perspectives. Literature and film can be powerful tools for understanding different emotional experiences. Empathy training. Consider participating in empathy training or workshops. These can provide structured guidance and practice in developing empathy skills. By actively working on these areas, individuals can enhance their capacity for empathy, which can lead to a more meaningful connection and a more caring society. Remember, empathy is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Fostering empathy in children, workplaces, and communities is essential for building more understanding and cohesive society. So, here are some strategies to encourage empathy in different environments. For children, model empathy. Children learn by example, so it's important for parents, teachers, and caregivers to demonstrate empathetic behavior. Teach emotional literacy. Help children to identify and express their emotions, as well as to recognize and respect the emotions of others. Encourage perspective taking, use stories, and role playing activities to help children understand different perspectives and the importance of considering others' feelings. Promote inclusivity. Teach children to appreciate diversity and to be inclusive of others, regardless of their background or abilities. In the workplace, empathy training. Provide training sessions that focus on developing empathy, active listening, and effective communication skills among employees. Foster an inclusive culture. Create a workplace environment that values diversity and encourages employees to share their experiences and viewpoints. Implement supportive policies. Develop policies that support workplace balance and employee well being, showing that the organization cares about its employees' personal lives. Leadership by example. Leadership should be demonstrating empathy in your interactions and decision making processes, setting a tone in communities. Community programs. Develop programs that bring people from different backgrounds together to share experiences and learn from one another. Volunteer opportunities. Opportunities encourage community members to engage in volunteer work that requires them to interact with and help people with various walks of life. Public awareness campaigns. Use media and public events to promote the importance of empathy and how it can positively impact community relationships, support groups, create safe spaces where individuals can express their feelings and experiences, fostering a sense of understanding and shared humanity. By implementing these strategies, you can nurture empathy across different age groups and social settings, ultimately contributing to a more compassionate and connected world. So, in summary, today's podcast delved into the crucial issue of empathy deficit and its impact on relationships and society. We began by defining empathy and what constitutes an empathy deficit, exploring the psychological and social factors that contribute to a lack of empathy. We discussed how empathy is fundamental to healthy relationships, allowing for deeper understanding and connection. We then examine the consequences of empathy deficit, which can lead to a conflict, breakdown in communication, and trust in personal professional relationships. On a societal level, we analyzed how a lack of empathy can exacerbate social divisions and contribute to a more hostile and disconnected community. We looked at case studies and current events that illustrate the effects of empathy deficits, such as the rise of cyberbullying and its devastating outcomes. We offered insights into how individuals can develop and strengthen their empathy skills through active listening, perspective taking, and engaging empathetic actions. Furthermore, we discussed strategies for fostering children, or rather, let's say this again. We discussed the strategies of fostering empathy in children, workplaces, and communities, emphasizing the importance of modeling empathetic behavior, teaching emotional literacy, and promoting inclusivity. I encourage all of you to reflect on your own levels of empathy. Consider the ways that you can enhance empathy in your daily interactions, whether it's by being present in conversations, making an effort to understand others' perspectives, or simply offering kindness and support. Every step up towards a greater empathy that can make a significant difference in your life and the lives around you. So I would like to thank you for joining me today on this journey to understanding and address the empathy deficit. Let's continue to work together and create a more empathetic and connected world. So, upon wrapping up this podcast, what I'd like to do is ask you, what brings life into you? We invite you to join the conversation by leaving your comments, sharing your thoughts and experiences, and subscribing to stay updated on future episodes. Your input is invaluable, and we'd love to hear how you're applying the insights of empathy in your daily life. So don't forget to share this podcast with friends, family, and colleagues who might benefit from our discussion. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and ensure that you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. The final thing I would like to say is this. I have an ebook on an empathy deficit and how you can change your behavior. And I'm looking at put together some challenges to help you work through and learn to become more empathetic. So, thank you for joining us today. And remember, every step you take towards increasing your empathy not only enriches your own life, but also contributes to a more compassionate and connected world. So, let's continue to grow together. And I'll see you in our next presentation and podcast.